Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is Douglas Helvey speaking to you from New Bern, North Carolina. I am going to be having a discussion today about conservative witches who wish to retake their positions within the Wiccan in general and the greater magical community in the larger sense. I personally have been practicing Wicca since 1987. I am, in fact, a third degree Lord High Priest in the Wicca religion, being a third degree in the Eternal Harvest Academy, Church, and Tradition of Wicca located in New Bern, North Carolina. I'm also an initiated magister in the Couveen of the Black Goat, a Couveen of Cunningcraft, which comes from Britain, and which was taught to me by my late friend and mentor, Peter Padden. Today I want to discuss with you folks the fact that for several years now, I have personally seen our once vibrant, intellectual, and really vocal community of real practitioners of witchcraft being shut down, closed off, and alienated. I think some of the words they use nowadays are canceled and so forth by the little wimps and troublemakers that regretfully are, at this point, as far as I can tell, the larger percentage of practitioners of modern Wicca in the United States, or at least what they consider Wicca to be, which their version is pretty much the most watered down version of our religion I have seen since 1987. The people I talk about are literally the ones who their various activist causes end up being their primary pursuits, and the actual practice of our faith loses its focus in their lives. I'm not even going to mention people's names because, frankly, I'm sure there's a fair number of us out there that know who I'm talking about. More likely, you've got a few in your own communities, going from the East Coast in North Carolina all the way to the West Coast in California. California. I am bringing up this discussion as a person that has, over the years, been defamed, libeled, and various other interesting legal words, to such a point that here in Eastern North Carolina, I actually contacted and got an attorney involved. And the people who at that time were smearing my name were told, basically, you need to shut your yap or I'm going to own everything you do now. And I will tell you right now, there were at least 6 people in Eastern North Carolina that was attacking me personally and making allegations about me that were not only untrue, but very scandalous. And frankly, I cursed them. And in the form of Wicca and witchcraft I practice, guess what? That's okay. And in the past, when people have lied about me and done me wrong, I can tell you right now, I caused some of them to lose their homes and various other important things in their lives, such as jobs and so forth. In other words, I am a warlock. Yeah, I know I'm using that bad word that supposedly means traitor. Guess what, folks? If you do any of the updated research that actually at this point is at least 10 or more years old, you'll find out that the word warlock does not come from were logi or betrayer of the faith. It comes from an Icelandic word that is called vardloker, or one who summons or sings up spirits. So I am one of a handful of men I know of who has been in times past initiated into Wicca and various other forms of legitimate witchcraft, who have decided to reclaim the name warlock for a male witch, and with a great deal of pride. Some of the things that have occurred to me personally in the past is I had one degenerate female. Don't even remember her name, but I remember where she lives. She lives in the Pacific Northwest, either Oregon or Washington. Don't remember which state. A number of years ago, this self-righteous, politically correct piece of trash decided that she didn't like the fact that I was a Trump supporter. And by the way, I still am. And if you don't like it, don't watch my podcast or whatever this is called. I am a conservative. I'm a conservative warlock. Or if you wish, a conservative witch. To me, either term obviously works. Now, what do I mean about conservative? Number one, I actually love my country. Unlike a lot of leftists nowadays who despise this nation that I personally spent 20 years fighting for, I actually love my country. Don't necessarily trust my government, but I do love my country. Number two, I believe in the sovereignty of my nation, of the United States of America. And I absolutely, without shame or anything else, undeniably and full-heartedly support the completion of the wall on the southern border of the United States. Numerous other countries on this planet have border walls and similar structures along their borders. Why in the world should not our own United States be able to have a border on our southern wall on our southern border? Number three, I believe in my country's military. Hence, I served 20 years in it. Now, the military has its problems, like any other thing in our country does. But as far as I can tell, we are still one of the best fighting forces on the planet. Having said that, I am now concerned about our military going woke or politically correct or whatever the words are that are being used nowadays, because this is going to harm the very men and women who serve in this country because of all of this stupid, egregious political correctness, woke BS that's being tossed around our nation and forced upon our military. I truly hope that I don't see the day that because of the weakening or the apparent attempt to weaken our armed forces by the impotent, callous, criminal leaders that currently run our government, regretfully so, will lead us down a path of destruction of our nation because of their stupid, political correct, woke policies that are currently destroying the very fabric of our nation. Also, for those of you out there who think, oh, he's a conservative, he's an evil person, guess what, dimwits? Some of our earliest founders of the modern Wicca movement were conservative. Gerald Gardner, even though he was a naturist, or in other words, he liked doing a lot of things that he did skyclad, which is fine, he was, by default, as a British citizen, a member of the Church of England. And therefore, it was not that it may have been well known, but his politics did in fact lean in a conservative direction, as did many of our other well-known early leaders and founders of our various Wiccan traditions in this country. It is with this idea that those of you leftists, wimpy, good for nothing, social outcasts who think you know about Wicca, most of your knowledge, you couldn't power a peant's motorcycle around the inside of the Cheerio with the supposed knowledge you hold about our faith. Most of you don't have a pot to pee in or a door to throw it out. A lot of you have problems with money. Oh, you shouldn't take money for your psychic abilities. You shouldn't take money for your witchcraft knowledge. Guess what, fools? That is so far from the truth, it's not even funny. And if you did your research, which is something most of you idiots don't do, you would find out and come to realize that one of the primary reasons Gerald Gardner put into the early teachings that one shouldn't take money for their witchcraft knowledge, psychic work, etc., because he was trying to move the early forms of the religion away from becoming problematic with the laws in Great Britain, in which at the time, before the laws against witchcraft were voted out in 1951, were taken off the books. In theory, a person who engaged in psychic readings or anything of that similar nature could get arrested under the auspices that if they were engaging in psychic readings, witchcraft for money, or anything of that nature, they was a fraud. And their concept of fraud was literally, by definition, if they charged for this service, they're considered a fraud. So in his early work, Gerald Gardner said, you know what? Let's play it safe. Let's not have anybody charge for what they do. And hence, that's the reason that some of the earlier dogmas in our faith came into play. They were as protective clauses, if you will, against the early practitioners running into unnecessary problems with the laws of the land, if you will. Also, I know some of you out there are going to jump on this real quick. The early Wiccan movement and early Wiccan leaders actually had difficulties with the prospect of admission of gays, lesbians, people of that persuasion, if you will, gays and lesbians, into their training formats, because of some of their teachings that were in place and had not quite at that time been fleshed out to a point of understanding that would make equal accessibility to the teachings of Wicca and similar practices accessible to members of what we would now call the LGBT community. And I'm not adding a bunch of other letters after that. LGBT is what I'm going to say. If you don't like it, don't listen. So the issues about our friends, male and female friends in the gay and lesbian community at the time, they had to get worked out, and luckily they did. And some of our most current, well-known leaders in the Wicca community today are gay or lesbian, which is quite fine. My first initiator was gay many, many years ago. Didn't matter to me. However, what members of the Democratic Party, left, communists, socialists, and other American-hating individuals have done is they've turned the Wicca faith into a recruiting ground for other leftists, other degenerates, and things of that nature. And yes, I'm using the word degenerate, and I don't care who likes it. Because as far as I'm concerned, if you're a commie, if you're a socialist, you're a worthless piece of shit. Point blank into statement. Okay? Bottom line. I fought against you people before in a land far, far away. So, now that I've started bringing forth my thoughts on this issue, if anybody actually ends up watching this and wishes to contact me, please do so. If you contact me with a respectful tone, and I'll give you respect back. If you send me any kind of stuff that you want to get me canceled or anything like that, go home, baby. Go back to your mama's basement where you belong. Go back to your MGTOW groups or whatever, anti-female groups you're members of, or anti-men groups that you're members of, and get a life. If you wish to engage me through emails or other forums, and you wish to share ideas with me about how we might start returning what at least at this point in time seems our minority group of conservative Wiccans, witches, and warlocks back into power within the Wiccan faith, I welcome the conversations. Other things I want to bring to the forefront as part of what has developed to a degree as my distaste for a larger part of the Wiccan community, usually, once again, the leftists, are the fact that nowadays, if you love your country, if you believe in your marital or your hand-fasting vows of monogamy to your husband or wife, if you're not a druggie, if you're not an alcoholic or a drunk or some kind of substance abuser that uses pagan gatherings or Wiccan gatherings to go to abuse said drugs, alcohol, or to sleep around on your husband or wife, I want it to be known that over the years, I've lost count of the number of men and women I've seen at gatherings. Some of those very gatherings my wife and I put together show up and inform all and sundry who might be in their voice area that, oh yeah, I'm married, but I'm not married this weekend. Or I'm in a relationship, but right now that's put on hold for the weekend. Or things like they'll just show up for the gathering, and the first thing they say is, when do we get the drunk on? When do we get the drunk on? Real impressive. Not, by the way, when is the first main ritual? What classes are we going to be teaching this weekend? No, it's who am I going to sleep with? When do we get the drunk on? They were wise enough not to ask me, as one of the creators of the event, where the drugs could be found, because I've looked right at people's face and I've told them, I find any drugs on my land, sheriff's being called on your butt. Sheriff's being called on you, because I abhor drugs. I don't drink. And frankly, I think those people in our faith who at least claim to be members of our faith and who really don't know the laws of Wicca, because if they did, they wouldn't do half the stuff that they do, have basically ruined it for a lot of other people. As a matter of fact, my wife and I we put on public gatherings no less than twice a year, sometimes more, definitely at Beltane and Samhain, Halloween, whatever you want to call it, twice a year for 12 years. 12 years. And there were times we would put on more gatherings than that. Sometimes we'd put on 3 or 4. But you know who ruined it? The druggies, dopers, the alcoholics, the people with extremely bad attitudes. Actually, worse than mine. And the people whose sole purpose to come to said events was to dishonor the vows that they took, whether it had been at a non-pagan marriage or a Wiccan hand fasting, because those individuals apparently weren't that good magicians or witches or warlocks, because they couldn't put a damper on their estrogen or their testosterone for an entire whopping 72 hours. No. They showed up to cheat on their spouses. Or in some cases, people that they swore up and down they were in a loving relationship with. Really? You're in a loving relationship, yet you're trying to bed down the first thing with a pulse you can find when you show up at a gathering. Oh yeah, you're a strong witch. You're a strong magician. You have no control and you're worthless. If you can't control your own body, then there's no way in hell you're a good witch, warlock, magician, or other. You're useless. End of statement. You have no control. If you can't control your own biology, then you can't control a damn thing. Okay, this is episode 1. It's my first rant. Future episodes may look the same way, but future episodes I'm going to be discussing magic. I'm going to be discussing other issues in reference to Wicca and the magical community. And who knows what else. Whatever pops into my mind. But be advised. You'll always see this banner behind me. Because unlike other scaredy cats in the Wicca faith, I fully embrace, endorse, and honor Baphomet, god of the witches, also known as the Sabbatic goat, also known as the goat of Mendes. Some might call it the devil, but it's the light between the horns, and Baphomet is the ultimate deity of wisdom. I sign off now.